Well, thank you. And again, like the other speakers, it's sometimes difficult to recognize your own biographies, but it's also my second opportunity to talk to Womensphere, which I've enjoyed. And that was, and like Olivia said, it's humbling and an experience I know that many of you go through every day, to be completely, outnumbered from a gender perspective. And I think it's good for us as men to realize that that's something you do every day of your lives, and something that we have to recognize is something we have to write. Because right now, in case you hadn't realized it, there's a real war going on, and it's a corporate war. And the corporate war is about talent. Because, leading global companies are genuinely trying to attract and keep the best people. And they know the people are the secret weapon. People are the things that are the essence that makes the difference. Technology, processes, and even some levels of technology in sales methodologies, for example, can be copied. But people can't be copied. So the best people are the people we have to keep. And if you're building a powerful team or choosing the best talent, it's the talent of that talent that really matters. Nothing else does, really. It's as simple as that. If you get the best people, you're going to make a huge difference. I call it a talent bias. I know you've been talking about bias, but I think it's right to have a talent bias. I think there's nothing wrong to actually focus on getting the best talent into your organization. But winning a war is not easy. And this one's particularly interesting because it's been going on for a long time. Business leaders have been wrestling with this, but now the war itself is actually evolving quite dramatically. In all the right companies and amongst the right leaders, gone are the days of just employing the right people to keep the statistics up. I agree there's still lots of companies that are doing that, but actually, I think the right companies and the right leaders are actually changing to really recognize that they have to make themselves attractive employers. They have to be places that people actually want to work, regardless of who they might be. But as we're here to discuss, in Womensphere, in the context of women in business, I'll try and keep to that agenda. But of course, this applies to many other minority groups that require to be championed within business. So I think that the balance, particularly for women who are clearly not a minority group but are actually 50-50, the fact that we're discussing it in the same context is interesting. Because actually now, if you look around, if you look at the subject of tweets, of magazine features, TV programs and films, you could argue that that it's actually a great time to be a woman, because there are some fantastic role models, as Olivia mentioned. From the courageous young Malala Yousafzai, who actually did incredible things to be courageous against the Taliban, to Angelina Jolie, who's respected for her charitable work despite some of her personal challenges, and even to the recent death of Margaret Thatcher, who, despite dividing the nation, was clearly held, and particularly internationally, as one of the great female leaders in modern history. And if you even take that in reference, my girls would say that that it's tempting to reference even the Spice Girls in this context, as they sum up as my girls would call girl power, of course. But actually, there's many examples of women making their own personal impact. But, they're also, as Olivia rightly identified, you've got to think in your own companies that yes, there must be strong females, and it's important that we do champion. But what about everybody else? How do we as leaders genuinely give opportunities to everybody else? What about the women who don't make the front covers? What about those who don't stand as internal or international celebrities? The everyday colleagues who live lives in their own heroic lives. Well, they're the ones who are really balancing the challenges of living in the 21st century of business and being a business person, and balancing that against family life. Now, I'm sure, each of these individuals is looking for different things, but in my experience, it tells me that whoever it might be and whatever we might do, we all want to be recognized for our talents, and we want to feel supported where we think we need support. So whilst achieving the balance is partly the responsibility of the individual, it's also the job of the leader and all of us as leaders. I believe it's up to the leaders to really spot those amazing talents that lie beneath each of the members of their teams and bring those talents out. Not everyone can do this. That's why they're chosen to lead and manage organizations. I often get asked the question, why are there not more women in top jobs in boards of companies and most of the well-known ones? And of course, it's a valid question. Women bring different skills and capabilities and perspectives, and that better balance really does make a difference in a boardroom and in a group. And I think Mary Lou recognised that statistically that's improves, or it may be Monica who said it, that actually is proven that, that diverse teams make a difference. And although the breakdown, is 50-50 in the population, we genuinely need to address that imbalance. So where is the problem? Well, there's clearly a number of issues. We actually find it's interesting when you talk to women, they don't have the old boys network, clearly. So it's important to find mentors, as was described earlier. And a network can be very, very powerful. And at CISCO, we've created a connected women's network, which is a very supportive and powerful network that can provide a much broader view than the old-fashioned old boys network, the nod and a wink type network. And of course, in that case, having role models is incredibly important. Seeing other women, achieving, seeing other women doing jobs that you might want to aspire to is also extremely powerful. And there's something else as well. I think, self-promotion is clearly an attribute that men seem to have in slightly greater proportion than women. I've got 2 daughters and 2 sons. I'm very lucky to have them, all grown up. My youngest one has just finished university. So he's off traveling around Europe now and using everything I'm sure he learned at university, which was mostly about drinking, I suspect, but there you go. But it was really interesting to counterpoint one of the examples of there. So my eldest daughter, both my 2 daughters are both in accounting for some reason, nothing to do with me. But the eldest one wanted to move roles, and she was looking to apply for a job in a retail company. And she phoned me up and said, "Dad, I would like to apply for this job, but I've only got 9 of the things that they want out of the 10. I said, genuinely said that to me. I said, "Jenny, you're an amazing person. You've got way over the qualifications in all the areas." By contrast, my son, who got his first job, went to a company who would only recruit from one university. He didn't go to that university. He had the wrong degree. He didn't have most of the qualifications. He probably had 3 out of 10. And he went for the job and he got it. So there's clearly something in that model that's not universally true of women, but it may be a feminine characteristic that we need to accentuate further and support. So in CISCO, we have a program called the JUMP program. And the JUMP program really is about helping people to look at career choices and to put them forward. For example, having young females shadow business executives and look at where some of the opportunities are, to give them a sense of where jobs that they might never have thought of going for, they should go for, and actually to encourage and support them in applying for roles and to going through the process of applying for those. And of course, in many cases, they get the roles, absolutely. So there's definitely something we need to support in that environment, and it's been a very successful program now rolled out across the world. And in some industries, and particularly in our industry, in the ICT industry, which really requires STEM-based skills, as was so eloquently talked about before, in the UK alone, there are predicted to be 500,000 jobs in the ICT industry available over the next 5 years, and there's a distinct shortage of skills. So as in reality, we really need to be focusing on how we attract young women, particularly into these jobs, but young people in general. And perception is a real challenge in here, and I loved Olivia's example of the one word, because we had exactly the same example when we tried to recruit for our apprentice program. So we created an apprentice program a couple of years ago, and the first round of those apprentices, we recruited for services roles, and we got 60-40 female-male in the end that we actually recruited, which was amazing for our industry and brilliant for us in CISCO to think we were recruiting a set of young people in where 60% were female, 40% were male. The second year we did it, we actually were looking for system engineers. And it was a very similar job, in fact, because the previous one had been in the services. This was now more in the sales environment, but it was a system engineers. In the first interview, we had 17 candidates. 15 were boys, 2 were girls, and the girls didn't turn up. So what we did was we changed the advert to simply to take out the word engineer and put business technology apprenticeships. Guess what? We got 60-40 female-male again. I mean, it was absolutely incredible change. And so the perception and the reality of how much, you know, people have a view of what a particular role is or how they'll engage in a particular role is important, which clearly is why role models and so on are so important. So, you know, I think it's really important that we fight this battle. We fight the battle to make sure that we want to, you know, get people to join our companies and to be in our companies. And again, the leader has a powerful role to play here. You know, I like to think of it as a leader inspiring people to want to stay and to want to develop and continue to be part of a team. But the leader is only as good as the troops, and then every leader wants to make sure they inspire the troops to stay together, to look out for each other and continue fighting for their cause. You know, and in this particular leadership change can be forced on us, as I was recently understood with our fresh graduates who came in who are changing the battlefield, which is interesting because I invited the graduates, and I like to do this on a periodic basis, to invite our new graduates in to sit with the UK board and tell them about their experience. And it was really interesting to get the perspective of young people in this environment, because almost the first question they asked, and they didn't quite say it in these words, but the first question was pretty much, what are you going to do to inspire me to stay at CISCO for the next 3 years? Which is really interesting. You know, I wouldn't have thought of that when I was a new graduate. I was delighted to have a job and, you know, thought it was great that somebody had actually wanted to employ me. But really interesting perception from the younger generation that employees feel about the world of work. And you put that in context then of some of the challenges, you know, of how you keep a balance within the organizations. So I think it's up to us as leaders to be more compelling in the way that we actually attract and develop talent inside our organization. You know, and attracting women into your company is just one mini battle, and I think inspiring them to stay and grow is an even bigger one. You know, if no one wants to be kept, obviously, you know, leaders need to do things differently, starting to create a career experience where women feel engaged and inspired enough to choose to stay, even when headhunters come knocking. You know, leaders have a great opportunity to do practical things, you know, on top of CISCO's JUMP program or our Connected Women, you know, by understanding the motivations of the team, and not just, you know, female colleagues, you know, but leaders can be informed about, you know, all aspects of developing and nurturing their teams. You know, you stand to gain a real advantage in the talent battle by genuinely being a more inclusive leader, I think. And by more inclusively means all your team members, not just the internal celebrities. So, you know, in reality, I just wanted to sum up by saying that, you know, we are genuinely in a talent war here. I think we're still in the battleground. There's a long way to go. There's a lot of blood to be shed, some sacrifices still to be made, and leaders have a lot of growing to do as well. And I think it means that leaders do have to think differently with all the pressures that they have. They need to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture has got huge dimensions about it. It's got many characteristic colours, angles, and perspective, all of which need to be thought about. But by seeing that bigger picture and making bolder and braver decisions, I think leaders can really help. You know, workplaces are really full of powerful women making their personal impact in the world. Some do it loudly. Many prefer to do it very quietly. You know, the Malalas, the Angelinas, the Maggie Thatchers and so on, or even the Spice Girls of the workplace, you know, are making an impact. They want to symbolize something. Everybody, you know, wants to show they believe in something and they want to achieve something. It's never good, really, to be biased about gender, but it's definitely good to be biased about talent. So thank you.